Well, we've made it to Wednesday, halfway through the week, and somehow it's still fucking January. I don't know where time is going, folks. I don't know what black hole we have fallen into, but evidently time moves both slow and fast in this new MAGA black hole that we exist inside of. It has been a hell of a week, and we're only halfway through. So, dear friends, my God, uh, let's get into it. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show. Hello, damnation. Welcome to the Danielle Moodie Show. We start today with a bit of a MAGA hangover. As we talked about yesterday, start of the show, Donald Trump's administration, Trump 2.0, the Trump regime, whatever the hell you want to refer to it as, decides that they are going to rescind, freeze, stop, throw a wrench in the wheel of America by freezing all federal loans and grants, all of them, right? This goes everywhere from school lunches to Head Start to Medicaid to Pell Grants and loans that help kids go to college in this country, unless your parents happen to be millionaires or billionaires and they just write one blank check, to every facet. And it created chaos. And when we were on the show yesterday, our wonderful moderators researched and said, oh, Danielle, federal judge has come out and they have blocked Donald Trump's ability to put this freeze into operation, which was supposed to happen at 5 p.m. yesterday. So you would think then all is well. Well, not really. Not at all, actually.
The benefit of seeing your emails, Phil Mattingly, trying to make us all smarter here at CNN. So why don't you impart that to our viewers?
Can I actually start by taking a step back for a second?
Please.
Because I think it's important to watch what's been happening over the course of the last 7 or 8 days and not think that these things are happening in isolation, right? And this is a really good example of it. Donald Trump campaigned on impoundments, campaigned on being able to take away Congress's power of the purse if he didn't think like that's wild. That he's campaigning on something that is illegal because of a 1974 law signed by Congress that banned presidents from withholding congressionally appropriated funding. He campaigned against that and said explicitly he was going to do it. His nominee to be budget director was on Capitol Hill testifying just a few days ago, saying he agreed with the president that this thing that is law is unconstitutional.
They want to test it.
They want that fight. And so when you see things like the birthright citizenship executive order, they want that fight. They know that that fight is coming, and they believe, based on the reality that currently surrounds them, which is so dramatically different than it was in 2017, that they can win that fight. And if they don't win that fight, there will be no other repercussions other than they just get it struck down. There are no lawmakers on their side of the aisle, which they hold both majorities of the House, of Congress, that are going to fight them on this or punish them for what they're doing, which is wild, by the way, that appropriators on the Republican side are not going bonkers right now. Chairwoman Susan Collins hasn't put out a statement yet. It's wild to me. They believe that the courts, particularly in the wake of what the president did in his first term with the circuit court judges and the 6-3 Supreme Court majority, largely is a very different environment than they were facing in the first term. They want the fights, and they're willing to not just wait and see, like, this is the process, we're not supposed to do this, we'll wait and see how this happens, maybe we'll get there after we try everything else. No, they're doing it now, right off the bat, because they want the fight.
So that is something that is important for us to understand, right? That unlike in 2017, when the first Trump administration would make harebrained decisions and we'd watch with just absolute shock and awe at the level of stupidity and ignorance with which they were mishandling the White House and the American government, that is not the case this time around. You have to understand that over the last 4 years, Donald Trump and his team of sycophants have been researching, learning, and growing their understanding of how government operates. And they are willing and able and ready to call in all of the federal judges that Donald Trump placed around the country with the help of Mitch McConnell when he was president the first time to win these cases, to go up to the Supreme Court that he has what? Moggified. So none of these things are happening as accidents. As Phil Mattingly said on CNN, they want the fight. They want for all of these cases to go into federal court so that the Supreme Court, which no longer believes in precedent or in any kind of rule of law and had already turned the presidency into a king instead of us being a part of a democratic republic, that they will win in the long run. So let's go back to what I said yesterday with regard to the 53 days that it took Hitler to undo democracy in Germany. We may think that on its face, they seem stupid and like they don't know what they're doing. And we see headlines like this and we think that we have a big win. Oh, the White House rescinds Trump's funding freeze. Memo after huge backlash. Even Hillary Clinton put up on her Instagram, it was the voice of the people that had this change happen. We learn, okay, so the White House Office of Management and Budget, OMB, rescinded a memo Wednesday that had ordered a temporary pause on federal funding and unleashed major confusion across the country. Why it matters, according to Axios, it's an astonishing reversal by the Trump administration a day after top officials defended the funding freeze, which a judge temporarily halted on Tuesday as necessary to ensure all government spending was aligned with the president's vision. We go on to hear from Senator Patty Murray here, where she said, this is an important victory for the American people whose voices were heard after massive pressure from every corner of this country. Real people made a difference by speaking out. Still, the Trump administration, through a combination of sheer incompetence, cruel intentions, and willful disregard of the law, caused real harm and chaos for millions over the span of 48 hours, which is still ongoing. But here's the thing, folks. To Phil Mattingly's point, that wasn't the point. The point, obviously, is always chaos and cruelty, but it is also to lay the groundwork for litigation that they believe will work in their favor. They are not just undoing the 20th century. They are undoing government as we know it. They are undoing the co-equal branches of government as we know it. Now, the Supreme Court, again, July 2024, gave the president the power of a king by giving him full immunity. By giving him full immunity, all Donald Trump has to do is just pardon everybody around. We know it's one big pardon party, right? You get a pardon, you get a pardon, you get a pardon. They are willing to cause the chaos, to have us temporarily believe that we are in some type of reprieve at this moment, while court cases abound from New York AGs to nonprofit organizations, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the point. They want to work this all the way through the courts to get to their favorable judges, their MAGA placements, who will say, yes, Donald Trump, you are a king. And to make matters worse, check out this hot shit from the press secretary. And I use that in quotations because what is she, 5 years old? Nonetheless, White House press secretary shuts down reports of the federal aid freeze being rescinded, says updated memo rescinds the original memo, and the freeze remains in quote unquote full force. Carolyn Levitt, leave it, whatever. I wish they would leave her. This is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It is simply a rescission of the OMB memo. Why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction, the president's EO on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. What? Huh? So, what is right here? Did they rescind their rescission? Did they stop? Is it a fake freeze? Is it a pause? Is it freeze tag? Like, what the fuck are we playing here? But clearly, to these MAGites, the whole point is confusion. Just like the whole point was to tell people a lie on the campaign trail that nothing was going to happen with Medicaid, that nothing was going to happen with the social safety nets. And the first thing that they do in the first 2 weeks of operation is to pull the rug out from their base as well as the entirety of America. So, folks, you have to see the game that they are playing because that's what it is to them. It's a game. They want the fight, as Phil Mattingly said. And I want to know whether or not the AGs, whether or not the nonprofits understand the games that are being played right now. Because this is what I continue to say. Republicans have been playing the long game for the last 40, 50 years. They have been putting people in place, slowly building up their infrastructure, building up their pipelines, waiting for an opening to make America white again, to make America racist again, to clear the field of any equity, any justice that may have transpired over the last 50, 60 years in order to usher in the next Gilded Age in America, where the oligarchs, the broligarchs, reign uncontested. So if I'm saying you've been playing this long game for the last 6 decades, what the fuck have Democrats been doing? Because you can see every time that this administration is going to do something, folks, you have to look beyond what you're seeing at first glance and think about where this is going to lead, what the real plan is. And that's why it's exhausting, because you can't take shit on face value because they're playing multiple games, right? It's like being, what's that movie? What is that? Inception, right? It's like you're going through these different doors and things are upside down and you don't really know which way is in and out. It's like a fucking horror house, a fun house at a carnival where you enter in and you're just looking through all of these weird mirrors and you don't know what side you're on or how to get out. That's the MAGA-verse that we are now trapped in for, at minimum, 4 years, but more likely decades to come. So are we in a federal freeze? Are we not in a federal freeze? We are literally playing freeze tag right now with children's access to lunch, Meals on Wheels, aid to colleges. Like, this is a fucking monopoly board to them, right? And we're just pieces. And so, is it really a win for the American people and their pushback? No, friends, it's not. It's just the beginning. And that's what we need to continually remind ourselves of. Coming in next. It is so difficult to look at this man, and it is even more difficult to listen to him. But for today and tomorrow, RFK Jr. is on Capitol Hill for a confirmation hearing that shouldn't even be fucking happening, because I can't think about how deeply, absolutely unfucking qualified this man is. But lo and behold, the Wall Street Journal, Murdoch's Wall Street Journal, the editorial board a couple of days ago came out with their post talking about why RFK Jr. is dangerous to public health. He's made millions from referring clients to trial lawyers and the advocates' mass tort litigation that would ruin the vaccine industry. Because here's the thing, folks. This is the gag. RFK Jr. becomes the head of Health and Human Services. The man is an absolute fucking nut job, right? Like bonkers. The things that he has said, the things that he's written, the things that he believes, like vaccines cause people to become transgender, that vaccines cause autism, that raw milk is some type of like super serum. I mean, it's wild. But he would be in charge of, I don't know, the CDC, the FDA. And here's the gag, is the fact that rich folks are starting to be like, oh, wait a minute. Like, even though I have millions and billions of dollars, I'm actually still a part of the public, which means that, oh, my money can't buy me out of a virus, right? It can't buy me out of getting sick, because he decides to take fluoride out of water because he thinks that fluoride shouldn't be a thing. You know, the very chemical that allows us to not have waterborne diseases, where we're actually able to drink the water that comes out of our pipes, of course, unless you're in, Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi, or any place like that. I digress. The reason why our water is safe is not just by like hopes and prayers. It's because of doctors and science and researchers and scientists that have innovated and have found ways to make public health, right, in the public interest. Not this MFer. He is a swindler that has gone around making money off of the lies that he spreads, and through litigations that he puts together. He's just another fucking grifter. That's why him and Donald Trump get along so well, except his grift is just in the medical industry, as opposed to, real estate and the entirety of government and meme coins and whatever the fuck else Donald Trump is trying to sell you, Bibles and sneakers. So as I mentioned yesterday, Carolyn Kennedy comes out, and she rarely gets involved, right, with things. She's a philanthropist. She has worked and used her profile, her name, and her money for really great causes throughout the course of her life. And she has come out and she wrote a scathing letter to key senators on yesterday, calling her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., a predator, addicted to attention from airing dangerous views on vaccination, and who is unfit to be the nation's health secretary. She cited Mr. Kennedy's decision to keep a financial stake in litigation against Merck, which makes a key vaccine against the human papillomavirus HPV that is administered to protect against cervical cancer. In other words, he is willing to enrich himself by denying access to a vaccine that can prevent almost all forms of cervical cancer and which has been safely administered to millions of boys and girls, Miss Kennedy wrote. But this is who Donald Trump has chosen. We all heard the leaked audio on the campaign where Kennedy, revealed the fact that he was in cahoots with Donald Trump the whole time, that he thought that his candidacy for the presidency was going to take votes away from Joe Biden until they realized that he was actually siphoning off votes from Donald Trump. So then he drops out of the race and then turns over his voters, right, to Donald Trump. It's all a part of the scheme. So what does RFK Jr. then say to Donald Trump? Well, if you want my voters and for me to leave the race, if you win, what do I get? Donald Trump says, I'm certain. What do you want? Well, I've been on this health grift for the last few decades. What about Secretary of HHS? Donald Trump doesn't even know what that stands for and doesn't care. So he says, sure, go for it. You talk about health stuff, so I guess this works. They link arms, they high five. RFK Jr. eats his first fucking burger, and they laugh all the way to Capitol Hill, where he is more than likely to be confirmed, regardless of any type of danger that he poses to all the people in that very room. Because let's not pretend that they give a fuck about their constituents. We know that they don't. They don't care about the public health, right? We understand that part. So, do they care about themselves enough to know that this man being in charge of public health also includes them, that they're not going to be able to bypass major outbreaks and viruses that happen in the country? Sure, they have their gated communities and their walls, but guess what? Just in the same way that COVID-19 didn't give a fuck how rich or well-connected you were, just ask Herman Cain. Ask Donald Trump if he even remembers who Herman Cain is. Because he certainly did drop dead after one of his MAGA COVID spreading rallies, never to be talked about again, not even in memoriam. So the one place, right, that your money can do a lot for you in the broligarchy. But if everybody gets sick, you ain't going to be able to hide behind your money then. So maybe the senators that are into this for the grift, for their proximity to power, maybe they'll have a come to Jesus moment, but they probably know Jesus as well as, like, I can't even come up with an analogy right now. It's just like It's so easy to see. Do you know what I'm saying? And frankly, Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes on this if all Democrats actually vote against him. But we got, you know, Fetterman and others, like, so who knows where that will go. But I'll say this man, and I know that I'm going to say this a lot, this man becomes Secretary of HHS, which is more than likely, literally, God help us. God help us, because God may be the only thing that will help us. Because I'm certain that bottled water stocks will go up, because are you going to be trusting the water that's coming out of the pipes? Right? I told folks after the election, I said, go get your vaccines. Now make sure your shit is up to date, because he's going to make it illegal to get vaccinated. So what are they going to make great again? Oh, I don't know. Polio, fucking chicken pox, measles, malaria, whatever it is that we've been able to get rid of in this country because of modern medicine. RFK Jr. views modern medicine as a threat. And so rather than just providing people with the option to opt out of vaccines, which I still believe is fucking stupid, he'll just get rid of them altogether. Tuberculosis, thank you. Thank you, Susan, for that reminder. Because I saw this last night, that tuberculosis cases are at an all-time high in Kansas. The Kansas Department of Health has put out, they've said that, it's not going to affect like the larger public, but we've never seen anything in our history that is as big as this outbreak here. Have you heard about it? Oh, that's right. No, I heard about it from a video that went up last week before Donald Trump told the CDC and that they can't communicate with anybody, including the public. And no one is talking about it. So that's where we are. But it gets better. So a little bit of breaking news, which is this. Donald Trump says he's directing the opening of a detention center at Guantanamo Bay to hold up to 30,000 migrants in the U.S. illegally. So I'm like, huh? Okay. So you're building a detention center, which we know is really a camp, which we know the last time around, they didn't want to provide any hygiene products like soap and toothbrushes or heat or clothing or mattresses or anything that you need to provide to human beings who are not criminals. And even if they are criminals, you still need to provide. And we know that folks in Texas had already said, yeah, here's a whole bunch of land. Build, baby, build. So much like I said in the beginning, you have to look behind these stories and these announcements, and you got to ask yourself, who benefits from this? Who benefited the last time around from this? Well, let's see, shall we? What Trump's victory means for the private prison industry. Let's take this in for a moment, shall we? Because everything comes back to money. So with every announcement that is made, the question that you need to ask yourself first is, who's making money off of this? So during the first Donald Trump administration, before he came into office, the private prison industry was on a lag because, people were having their needs met. You have less crime. You need to build less prisons. And for the prison industrial complex, that's a bad thing. For society as a whole, that's a good thing. But fuck society, right? Right. So the stock prices of the country's two largest publicly traded companies that own and manage prisons and immigrant detention centers soared immediately following Donald Trump's election as president. Shares in the Geo Group and Core Civic rose again the day after the president-elect announced Tom Homan, who managed immigration enforcement during Trump's first administration, as his, quote, border czar. Speaking at the Republican National Convention this summer, Homan said, quote, I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's released in our country. You better start packing now. So tough. So scary. The fact is that, once again, this is all another money-making grift. Donald Trump makes this announcement. His cronies in Congress and outside of Congress who have investments in the private prison industry, their money goes through the fucking roof. The rich get richer. The poor and undocumented get locked the fuck up. And guess what? The larger public, right, who voted for Donald Trump, believe that if you're here illegally, then you should be gone. So when these folks start disappearing, which is already happening, who's going to miss them? Who's going to report them missing? You always go for the low-hanging fruit. But like I say, the rich are never satiated. So when those immigrants, those undocumented folks are sent back to their countries and those 30,000 prisons, camps begin to empty out, who's going to fill them? Maybe trans folks, maybe LGBTQ folks, maybe your political enemies, maybe folks in the media, maybe any dissenters that you label as terrorists, because you got to keep the money coming in. So if you think that those prisons that they're about to make a killing on are only going to be there for the undocumented, think again. Think again. So when I say that this is just the beginning, that's what I mean. Because they never get full. It is never enough. And the only way that you stop them is by actually stopping them. In other news, Senator Menendez, the disgraced senator from the state of New Jersey, has been sentenced. And funny enough, he's a grifter just like Donald Trump. And maybe in order to stay out of jail, he should have run for the presidency because he would have been covered then. The only wrong move that Robert Menendez made was not being ambitious enough. Because honestly, tell me what the difference is between the hot shit that he was doing while senator and all of the shit Donald Trump has been doing his entire life, and then expanded his criminal enterprise when he was president the first time around. So, Mr. Menendez, a powerful longtime senator from New Jersey, was convicted last year on federal bribery and corruption charges. Robert Menendez, New Jersey's disgraced former senator, who was once one of the most powerful Democrats in Washington, was sentenced on Wednesday to 11 years in prison after being convicted of being at the center of an audacious and years-long international bribery scheme. Like I said, folks, I'm going to do a deep cut, as Wajahat always says. Salt and Pepper once sang a song, and one of the lines said, "The only difference between a hooker and a hoe is the fee. The only difference between Robert Menendez and Donald Trump is the title." Because one had gold bricks in his closet, the other one has gold toilets and fake and fucking documents scattered all around the shitter. There is no difference. There's no daylight here between these two men, except for their certain station right now. Robert Menendez should have either been a Supreme Court justice or president of the United States, and he would not be looking down the barrel of an 11-year federal prison sentence. And frankly, you know what? If he were a Republican, this would have gone away. Because you know who, right now, while we're on air, the New York Times put out, guess whose federal bribery case is going away? My New York City mayor, Eric Adams, who's been fleecing the people of New York City. But he's been tap dancing down at Mar-a-Lago for the last several weeks. And frankly, it looks like it's about to pay off. So Eric Adams, again, you know, maybe Robert Menendez over the last couple of weeks should have been down at Mar-a-Lago tap dancing for Donald Trump and doing whatever he could. Because again, if he were a Republican, he wouldn't be going to jail. The grift never ends, folks. It really doesn't. And it's so infuriating. But this is what the judge said to Robert Menendez today. Quote, "You were successful, powerful," the Judge Sidney H. Stein of Federal District Court said before announcing the penalty. "You stood at the apex of our political system. Somewhere along the way, I don't know where it was, you lost your way. Working for the public good became working for your good." But like I said, folks, what's the difference here? There is none. It's only illegal if it's a Democrat that does it. It's only bad if it's a Black person or a person of color does it. But if a white, powerful Republican man or woman does the same thing, that's just being smart. That's just knowing the game. It's sickening and it's infuriating. And this is what gets people to want to distance themselves altogether from politics. Because they see this shit play out and they say, so what's the difference? And in this case, honestly, nothing. Absolute power does what, dear friends? Corrupts absolutely. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. The only thing that holds these people to any kind of account is us, the people. The power of the people is stronger than the people in power. And this is the thing that we have to remind ourselves of each and every day of this God-forsaken MAGA black hole that we find ourselves inside of. Is that they cannot exist without us and our willingness to allow them to continue to hoodwink and fucking bamboozle us into believing that any of them have our best interests at heart. Which is why I wrote today and shared on my social media what action I think should be taken. Which is this. I put it on Blue Sky today. Go to Blue Sky, repost it, reshare it if you agree. I wrote this. We need a national strike across critical industries. Union leaders that represent everyone from teachers to auto workers to factory workers to nurses and so on need to coordinate across their industries and send a message to this administration. The people must unite against the oligarchy. These are my thoughts. And maybe if more people share them, more people post them, maybe someone will begin to pay attention and activate on this idea. What would happen if we all just said, no, I'm not going to work until you take your fucking hands off of our social safety nets, off of what we've paid into. I'm not spending a dime. And I don't care who they come for first because I know that they will come for me eventually. That is the mindset that I need people to have. This isn't just about trans people or disabled people or black people, people of color, Muslims or Jewish people, etc., etc. It is about all of us. That Martin Niemöller poem that said, first they came for. They always come for the low-hanging fruit. And in this country, Republicans were able to use embedded hatred of the other to turn people against undocumented immigrants, the very people that are the foundation for so many industries that allow this country to move, that actually, unlike Donald Trump, pay fucking taxes, but don't get any of the benefits of the taxes that they pay. Then they go after trans folks because still a majority of the country doesn't actually know or have come into contact with a person that is trans, so you can demonize them as well. They will keep coming for every single fucking group. Stop falling for the rope-a-dope and thinking that we have to battle for the crumbs that they are leaving behind when we are owed the whole fucking cake that we baked. This is the reminder that we are more powerful than we realize. And once we collectively come to that conscious understanding, then we can move outside of our fear and move into our power. That is it for me today, dear friends, on the Danielle Moodie Show. As always, power to the people and to all the people power. Get woke, stay sane, and in these incredibly Dangerous times, dear friends. Do stay safe. And please, if you are liking these shows and loving these episodes, please do actually physically like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the algorithm, it boosts our numbers. We're up and we're trying to hit 13,000 in the next couple of days. So I need you all to like, comment, subscribe, and share. As soon as the episode goes up, share away. As always, thank you so much for your donations. This is independent media, and every dollar counts and helps me create the content that you all deserve. I will see you back here tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, for our Call to Action Thursdays. Be well, dear friends, and take care of yourselves. See you tomorrow.